A Flash in the Dark, Chapter 36, Party Time. Barry arrived at the CCPD at 9:15 the next morning. She was running almost early by her standards. She was perfectly fine, all healed after several large glasses of water, 2.5 pizzas, and a serving of Chinese takeout Iris had brought once Eddie had calmed her down enough to not panic. The officers at the precinct teased her for jumping in front of Bruce, but it was clear that they were at least mildly impressed at the bravery of the CSI. "Alan, you're looking better," Singh commented. "Feeling much better, thanks, Captain." She grinned at him from where she was leaning against Joe's desk. Singh nodded and smiled lightly and popped his head back into his office, where he was sharing coffee with his fiancée Rob and Mr. Wayne. Barry had a feeling Rob being at the precinct was no coincidence. He'd had a long-time celebrity crush on Bruce Wayne. Barry finished giving her report and snorted as she saw Rob pull out his phone and the three men squeeze in for a picture. Eddie glanced around her and laughed as well. "Looks like Rob, soon-to-be Singh, is trying to steal Bruce Wayne from under you," Eddie teased. Barry laughed. "Bruce and I are just friends," she insisted. Eddie bounced his eyebrows at Barry. "So it's Bruce now, is it?" he asked. Barry laughed as the door to Captain Singh's office opened and Bruce and Rob exited, both chuckling. Bruce nodded to Rob and shook his hand. He then slowly meandered over to Barry. He smiled at her. "So, are we all good to go, Barry?" he asked, holding out his arm to her. Barry nodded and stood slowly. "If Captain Singh says so, yeah." Barry glanced at Captain Singh, where he'd thrown an arm around Rob. Singh seemed to think about it for a moment before Rob elbowed him in the side. All right, go on. Get out of here. But I expect you to be at the fundraiser tonight," he said, waggling his finger. Bruce smiled at that and offered Barry his arm. "Don't worry, Captain. I'll have her back by then," Bruce said, winking at Barry. Rob giggled as Barry blushed scarlet and took Bruce's arm. The precinct burst out in laughter as Bruce led Barry out of the building and off to his waiting limo. Alfred smiled at the pair as they slid into the back seat. Barry waved. He was just your butler," Barry said, sliding into the limo fully, feeling very out of place. "I am Master Wayne's butler, driver, personal security, and on occasion his battlefield medic," Alfred explained, nodding to her. Barry smiled and leaned closer to Bruce. "So he knows?" she asked lowly. Bruce nodded. "Alfred is one of the only people I trust with my secrets," he said pointedly. Barry nodded, smiling slightly. Soon the limo pulled up to a very fancy-looking restaurant. Barry glanced down at her jeans and t-shirt. I'm not exactly dressed for a fancy place," she said, gesturing down at her clothes. Bruce smiled and opened a box that had been sitting next to him. "Barry, there is one thing you have to learn about me. I'm prepared for everything. The windows are blacked out. You can change in here." Bruce handed Barry the box and exited the limo. Alfred followed him, leaving Barry alone. Barry rolled her eyes and opened the box. She whistled. There were actually 2 items in the box, a blouse of a flowy green, slightly shimmery material, and a black skirt that would hit Barry around her knees. It was flowy and very, very pretty. Barry changed quickly and carefully. She'd never used her powers with something this delicate. She managed it in just a few minutes without setting anything on fire. She tried to straighten her hair, but decided that the wind-blown look worked and found a pair of black flats, just her size, at the bottom of the box. She rolled her eyes and slipped them on. "You know, I should really question how you people know my size," she muttered as she left the limo. Bruce chuckled. She looked nice, the green setting off the hazel of her eyes. Her slightly wind-blown mane was falling in them. "You people?" he asked, again offering his arm. Barry chuckled. "The only 2 millionaires I've ever met have both gotten me clothes at one point or another, and they both guessed my size and got it right," she admitted, brushing her hair behind her ear. Bruce tried to hold back a smile. "I'm a billionaire, just to be clear. And if there's one thing I've learned living this lifestyle, it's how to know what to get a beautiful woman. And how to guess her size." Bruce winked. Barry snorted a laugh even as her cheeks went dark red. Bruce led her into the restaurant, which she was surprised to discover was completely empty, save for the hostess waiting at the podium just inside the door. Noticing Barry's confused expression, Bruce's smile grew. I bought out the restaurant for the next few hours, so we could talk in private, Bruce explained. Barry stared at him as the hostess bowed and led them to a lush table in the corner. There were candles in the center and a bottle of champagne already chilling in a silver bucket. Barry raised an eyebrow. If I didn't know better, Mr. Wayne, I would say you're trying to seduce me, she teased. Bruce laughed as he pulled out her chair for her. Let's just say it's not often someone saves my life. I wanted to treat you to a day of fun and relaxation as a thank you, Bruce said, taking his own seat. Barry smiled and waited until the hostess had popped the champagne and poured them each a glass, and walked away to get their server before she spoke. Yes, but I'd honestly call us even, she pointed out. Bruce sipped his champagne. The rest of the world doesn't know that. I appreciate your discretion on that matter, by the way. Lying to your boss can't be easy. So this is all about keeping up appearances? She asked, glancing around to ensure they were alone. Bruce nodded. He wasn't normally so candid with this type of thing, but Barry already knew, so there was no point in not telling her the truth. Barry shook her head, taking a sip of champagne. I can live with that, she said, shrugging. Bruce laughed, and they clinked glasses and shared a smile full of secrets as their server came over to them. An hour and a half later, they exited the restaurant, laughing at a joke Barry had made. Alfred smiled. It had been far too long since he'd seen Bruce smiling without it being fake or forced. He couldn't see the spark that he saw when he watched Bruce out on patrol facing off against Catwoman, but Barry Allen seemed to be adept at coaxing Bruce out of his shell, if only just a little. They got back into the limo where Barry's clothes were neatly folded in the box. Bruce smiled at Barry. Unfortunately, I have some Wayne Enterprises business to attend to, but I have another surprise for you. Alfred will take you there, and they'll take good care of you. All expenses paid, of course, Bruce assured. Barry shook her head, giggling slightly. Bruce, this is all too much, Barry began. Bruce shook his head. Nothing is too much when Bruce Wayne, swinging bachelor, gets his life saved by a beautiful woman. The press would expect nothing less, he pointed out. Barry raised an eyebrow. How on earth do you think the press knows anything that's happened today at all? She asked. Bruce pulled out his phone and opened the browser to a news page. Splashed across most of the headlines were the words Bruce Wayne's mystery date and Lady Lifesaver treated to lunch. Under these headlines were somewhat blurry photos of the two of them in the restaurant. She couldn't clearly make out her own face. She'd been facing away from the window, but she could make out Bruce's. Barry laughed. And I thought I got to work fast, Barry joked. Bruce rolled his eyes. From the angle of the photo, Barry would guess that they were hidden in the bushes outside the back of the restaurant. Bruce had clearly known they were there the whole time. Barry shook her head and handed Bruce back his phone as they pulled up in front of Wayne Enterprises. Bruce took her hand and kissed the back of it before he stepped out of the limo. Once Bruce was safely ensconced in the building, Alfred pulled out onto the road. Barry leaned forward. So, am I allowed to know where we're going? She asked. Alfred chuckled. That would rather defeat the purpose of a surprise, Miss Allen, he teased. Barry sighed. You can call me Barry, Mr. Pennyworth. Then you may call me Alfred, miss, he said with a smile. Barry shook her head slightly with a smile on her face. All right, then. It took them about 20 minutes to reach their destination. It was a fancy building tucked into the back of a line of high-end shops. The sign above the door was written in fancy gold lettering. It only had one simple word on it, Glow. Alfred opened the door for her and spoke with the woman at the front counter. She bowed to both of them and turned to speak only to Barry. Miss Allen, if you will please follow me, she said, gesturing to the door into the back. Barry raised an eyebrow and shrugged, following the woman. It turned out that this was an upscale spa, and Bruce had paid for a full workup. Everything from massage to having a manicure and pedicure. Barry had never felt more relaxed or spoiled. By the time the ladies at the spa escorted her to a room to get her hair done, Barry was practically putty. The hairstylist smiled and ran a comb through Barry's hair. Mr. Wayne asked us to make sure that you looked absolutely your best for tonight, and we've only got 3 hours to make that happen. Has anyone ever told you you have fantastic hair? Now, let's get it under control. After much teasing and curling and trimming of frayed ends, Barry looked and felt like a princess. She was taken into another room where a person who could only have been a professional makeup artist did her makeup and placed small gold rose earrings in her ears and a matching necklace around her neck. She was escorted back to the dressing rooms and found that there was yet another gift waiting for her. She shook her head and sighed. Bruce smiled as he spotted Barry getting out of his limo. She looked fantastic in gold. The dress he'd given her was nearly floor length, with a slit up the leg about to mid-thigh. You could just see the gold strappy sandals beyond the slit in the skirt. Her hair fell in elegant waves down her back, and the dusting of gold around her eyes made them pop, while the charcoal liner brought out the color. He extended his hand to her. She took it and blushed as cameras started going off. Just smile and wave, Barry. Barry nodded and complied.